Sarah Foster is a Democrat. She tweeted this out. We pay the highest taxes in California. Our fire hydrants are empty. Our vegetation was overgrown, brush not cleared. Our reservoirs were emptied by our governor because tribal leaders wanted to save fish. Our fire department budget was cut by our mayor, but thank God drug addicts are getting their drug kits. Mayor of LA, that's Karen Bass, at Gavin Newsom, resign. Your far-left policies have ruined our state and also our party.
Gavin Newsom, because of his forestry policies and his water policies, has crippled the state. And it's not like this doesn't happen every several years, Sean. They could have fixed this problem, but they don't need to because they don't answer to a political opponent and they don't answer to a media. The double standard is palpable and it's disgusting.
All right, guys, Carter funeral this morning. Unbelievable. We're going to break this down. There's obviously a day of mourning. In case you're wondering why you didn't get your mail today, it's because it's a national day of mourning. And the government had an excuse not to work today. That was, it's technically most government services aren't happening. So on a normal day, they don't work. But today, they actually had an excuse because it's a national day of mourning for President Carter. Really interesting dynamics at the funeral this morning. We're going to break that down. President Trump and former First Lady and soon-to-be First Lady again, Melania, paying their respects to Carter. Also last night at the Capitol, Trump meeting with senators then, trying to get this big reconciliation bill and agenda on track. He's also invited like everyone in the world except for, I'm waiting for my invitation to go down to Mar-a-Lago, but I think everybody's got an invitation now to go down to Mar-a-Lago. And these fires raging in LA, I want to talk a little bit about the accountability, the coverage, and some of the policies that are leading up, because obviously we feel bad. It's very it tears at your heart when you watch some of these people talk about losing everything. But unfortunately, they talk about the right during hurricanes and all this other stuff. So we do need to talk about the politics and the policy that led into that. Before I lead into this, you guys have known for year and a half now, whatever, Delta Rescue, Leo Grillo have been at the forefront of sponsoring this show. You know what I think of Leo Grillo and Delta Rescue. You go to deltarescue.org, you can see it. They do amazing work. They rescue abandoned, neglected, malnutrition dogs, animals, cats of all sizes and shapes. It's amazing what they've done. I've never told you this before. If you haven't gone to Delta Rescue, you probably don't know. They're located in Glendale, California. If you look on a map, that's right between those two storms. And you read these stories about people abandoning their cars. They're also abandoning their pets. And Leo Grillo has made a lifetime of rescuing and creating the world's largest no-kill sanctuary out there in California. Amazing work what he's done. If you've considered a donation in the past but haven't yet, do it today. I'm going to do it today. I'm going to make an additional contribution because he's doing an amazing work 365 days a week for decades. But more than ever, I think Leo and the folks at Delta Rescue need our help. So real world, we want to help. There's a lot of ways we can help the people in California deal with what they're going through. But for those of you who are pet lovers, please consider a contribution now to Delta Rescue, to deltarescue.org. I can't thank you enough for the support that you've given them over the months. Leo's been there for me for this show. Let's be there for Leo right now. All right. Before we get into it with the panel, just to give you two quick admin notes. One, tomorrow, Matt Laszlo is going to be on the show. In any other week, I would have thought this was silly, but he is the foremost reporter on Capitol Hill right now covering drones and UAPs. And in a normal week, this might be kind of a silly discussion, like, oh, let's talk about UAP and drones. There is a massive national security issue here. Like, why are we not asking more questions? What do politicians know? What do government officials know? How concerning is this? Matt asks them every single day he's on the Hill, asking them what they know, but they don't. And there's a difference between the drones and the UAPs, right? And I'm going to get to it. I'm telling you, this is a conversation I'm looking forward to, and I hope you tune in too. It's a great Friday discussion. So take time to make sure you're hitting that subscribe and notification button, and please be willing to share it. All right, before I get into it with the panel, if you are someone who runs a business or is in charge of employees and expenses and stuff like that, whether you got 5 or 5,000 employees, if you don't have one of these ramp cards, you need one. Go to ramp.com/Spicer right now. This is like, you can, like a normal Visa card, except for it's issued. You guys can go to ramp.com/Spicer, check it out. It's like in 15 minutes, they can have you up and running through some simple documents that you have to upload. and you get issued virtual cards, actual physical cards like that your employees can use, like a normal Visa card. They run around. You can set limits on expenses. You don't have to chase receipts. It saves you so much time and money. As I mentioned to you before, I've had a guest on the show who runs a company. He said he went out and got Ramp, and it saved him an unbelievable amount of time. There's no more chasing down these receipts, trying to collect everything, wondering what's in someone's pocket and whether they lost it and all this kind of stuff. Saves you a ton of time and money. It only takes about 15 minutes to get started. They'll give you, here's the kicker. If you go to ramp.com right now, you get $250 just for signing up. $250 in your pocket. So be the hero at work to save time and money and also make a little something for yourself. You know what I'm saying? Maybe pay yourself back for those holiday gifts. Ramp.com/Spicer. Cards are issued by Sutton and Celtic Bank, members FDIC, and terms and conditions apply. All right, a lot to break down with the panel. Want to bring in the amazing Grace Curley, our friend up there in Boston, the host of the Grace Curley Show, WRKO 680 AM, a columnist for the Boston Herald and a contributor at the Spectre and Mail Online. My former colleague at Newsmax and the new senior director of media affairs and chief spokesperson at America First Policy Institute. A former Newsmax colleague, as I mentioned, and White House correspondent for WOAN, and our pet project of 2025, part of my New Year's resolution to help other people. Mr. Larry O'Connor, the host of the O'Connor and Company show here in our nation's capital, one where I allow my mentor skills to be in full display, helping him move along as a commentator, as a host. I was, as you guys know, I sat in to help the show along prior to the holidays. Larry was, at the behest of his bosses, sat there and took copious notes. So welcome to you all. Great to see you all. Larry, I hope you learned a lot from my guest hosting.
Thank you for the opportunity to express my appreciation for filling in for me while I had a vacation. That's what actually happened. And I just want
we'll stick with whatever story you want to go to. I know that. Anyway, I'll just leave it at that.
Thanks for not breaking my show, like many of the other media catastrophes.
I've heard ratings were up significantly. Chris Plant called me. He follows you. And he said, I don't know whatever you did as a lead-in, but I've never had that many people excited to tune in. And I said, Chris, it could be this way all the time. Anyway, I don't want to belabor that. Jen Pellegrino, congratulations on the new gig.
Thank you.
Very excited about all the great work that AFPI does. Amazing efforts in that lead up to the election. And obviously, you guys got to be very excited about the work that President Trump is going to be able to do. Because I think a lot of the people and the policies that AFPI led in the last 4 years are going to come to fruition now. So excited to see what you guys are going to do in the next few years.
Thank you, Sean. We're certainly thrilled over here. It's a massive celebration, a lot of hard work over the last few years, work that outsiders like us didn't see. And now I'm seeing a lot of that on the inside. And there's so much more being planned here for the next 100 years of keeping America first. It's not just a short-term movement, but this is something that we're really excited about. So a lot to come here in the next few days as we look to inauguration. So we're thrilled.
Okay. I'm excited about all the parties that I will be invited to now that I have an inside track with you. So thank you. I'm excited already. It just advanced.
Thank God we know what this all means to Sean.
As I say, when someone gets a job,
what we were missing
it's very Washington. When someone gets a new job, I say, how is this good for me?
Yes.
All right. Grace Curley, I want to get to the LA wildfires for politics and policy reasons, and we'll talk about that in a second. And then obviously some impact about what's going on at Capitol Hill in the agenda. But I want to start with this Carter funeral because I'm watching this morning, and we do this morning meeting every morning with Mark Halperin and Dan Turrentine. We had some great guests on this morning. But, I was talking about it on the show that I love looking at it's like a red carpet for me. I love the people watching. And I'm watching some of the dynamics there. And I was saying to Mark Halperin prior, during that show that I wanted to see how Trump interacted with others. And it was funny because he's sitting there next to Obama. They had so the first row was President Biden and Mrs. Biden, and then Kamala Harris and Doug Emhoff. And then behind that were the former presidents in their order of presidency, right? So you had Clinton, and then obviously, I think, so Bush, and then Obama, and then anyway, they were in succession. And so Trump and Obama are sitting next to each other, and Obama's in stitches. And I'm like, these guys are like looking like their old college pals. Like, what did you, again, I don't want to belabor this point too much, but I thought there was something kind of fascinating about the people watching at the funeral.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I don't usually tune in for those kind of long state ceremonies where, it's going to be a lot of just the cameras, and then, you have to wait an extra 20 minutes, people just hanging around. But for this one, I was like, I got to see this. I got to see who they sit him next to. And I love, because I had a friend who said to me yesterday, I wonder if he should even go to this, talking about Trump. And I said, this is what's so great about Trump, is that Trump's like that friend you have that doesn't feel awkward about anything. Like you walk into a situation. I'm the type of person, I overthink everything. So I leave a party or I leave something and I say to my husband, I shouldn't have said that. That was not my best work. I made a fool of myself. And then you have people who are just, it doesn't even dawn on them. Trump is so confident. And I think it's important to him to be there to say, no, I'm a former president and I'm also a future president. Like, despite everything you guys did, I'm going to be back in the White House. That's important to him. And the dynamic that he's had with Barack Obama has been so, like, there are a lot of people, Sean, we saw him sit down with Biden during the peaceful transition, wink, wink. And they talked for a really long time. They were joking around. I do think that anger-wise, I think he has a special anger for Barack Obama. I think it all goes back to that joke about you'll never be president. But he's able to let that go and just kind of just laugh and talk to someone next to him. It's very fascinating. It's almost surreal to see all these people. And Mike Pence is there. It's very weird.
Larry, you were...
Yeah, listen, I think that there's a lot going on here. The fact that Trump is yucking it up with Obama tells you a lot. First of all, Trump is a funny guy, and he's fun to be around. I mean, I learned that from reading your book, Sean, The Briefing. He obviously is kind of a blast to be around, except when you're in the blast radius when he's not happy. The thing about Obama laughing at Trump, the best part of it is it really pisses off Democrats, because Obama was there a week before Election Day saying that he was a fascist, that he was a Klansman, that he was a white nationalist, and he said that the white supremacists at Charlottesville were very fine people, and now he's having a joke with them. So, was he full of crap back during the campaign, or now is all forgiven? And Trump's got to be enjoying this, because there are 3 one-term presidents there at the National Cathedral. 2 of them will never get a second term, Biden and, regrettably, the late Jimmy Carter. Donald Trump did something that none of them did. He ran again and he won. And it's got to be a bit of a victory lap for him.
Hey,
I will say... Go ahead, Jen. I was just going to say, I think Grace is...
You're not allowed to speak, Sean. It's my turn.
No. As Grace was speaking, though, I was like, I'm identifying with exactly what Grace is saying, and I love the way she framed that. But, Jen, I'm sorry.
No, listen, all great points there made by both of you. And I would just add, you think back to right after the election and even leading up to it, how there was a lot of speculation. Is Jill Biden voting for Donald Trump? And you have to wonder how many other people in that cathedral also maybe were not so disappointed that President Trump won, that maybe expressed disappointment publicly, but are feeling pretty good that Kamala Harris is not in the White House. So that's interesting. But great points there about President Trump being in any crowd, being confident. We've seen him with world leaders and the confidence he expresses, and others that seem like these dictators that get in the room with him and obviously are basically bowing down to him. So it speaks volumes about what's ahead, as well as we look to him joining us back here in Washington in just several days.
Yeah, I want to pick up on a couple points and then we'll move on, because I think, one, what Jen said is so true. There's a reason Donald Trump loves to be in the room with somebody, because he can win him over. So he always wants to, and that's right. I mean, we saw it today that these guys, you can't help but like joke around with him. And he's just a good person to be in the room with, and he can disarm anybody. And that's why he always, the media freaks out. Why does he want to meet with Putin? Why does he want to? Because he knows he can disarm them and get a good deal. And that, I think what Jen said is spot on. What Grace was talking about, exactly, right? I mean, this is so apropos, but I thought that the other takeaways for me is, as I mentioned, Obama and him yucking it up, to Larry's point. Like, it was like, dude, nothing, we're all good, right? We're laughing. Trump shaking Mike Pence's hand. It was like, I think Pence was sort of like, I should have kept quiet. I'm not, but I think he realizes, holy smokes, like, I'd rather be there for season 2 than season 1. But then also, I will tell you this. When Kamala Harris got seated, and then Jill and Joe Biden walked in, and obviously, like, the seating, the protocol is all like very, very well orchestrated. And so you had president and their spouse, right? So Biden, and then First Lady Jill Biden, and then Kamala Harris. When Jill Biden sits down, it is to Grace's point a moment ago, like, it is so awkward. Kamala Harris tries to lean over, like, "Hey, girl," and it was like Ice Queen City. It was like,
I can't wait for the bad lip reading on this. It's going to be so good.
How crazy is that it's more awkward between Jill and Kamala than it is between Barack Obama and Donald Trump. Like that just shows you his ability to win people over.
Jill Biden would have rather traded places with President Carter than sit next to Kamala Harris at that moment. And as great as it is to see Obama yucking it up with Trump, Trump should just check his back for the knife, because Obama was, orchestrating the very wonderful, peaceful transition when Trump won in 2016. And all the while he was planning with James Comey and John Brennan and the entire cabal till it hatched the Russian collusion investigation that sort of handcuffed the first year of that presidency. So
listen,
I don't buy any of the good cheer coming from Barack Obama.
We know the knives are out. We know there's so much planning here in this swamp of a town for all that they're going to do, and in terms of going after Trump with his day one orders. They've been planning it for months now, anticipating this moment. So, buckle up, definitely.
So, by the way, I want to move on, but let's just sum this up. Joe Biden can't talk to Kamala Harris. Obama's yucking it up with Trump. Biden doesn't want to talk to Obama. I mean, this is like literally, I think there should be a producer that walks out and says, "Look, guys, we could do season 1 right now." Because that to me is like the perfect house for like one of those reality shows. But the dynamics were so amazing. But Trump's the guy yucking it up with everybody. Barack won't talk to Biden. Mrs. Biden won't talk to Kamala. Bill Clinton's like sitting on the corner, like, "I'll talk to anybody." And George W. Bush was like having a blast. But it was so funny to watch. It was like an episode out of like a high school musical. All right, let's move on to some serious stuff, because I want to talk about LA wildfires and then sort of the agenda that Jen mentioned. Larry, I know you were out. You've been out west a bunch in terms of your career and stuff. And look, I just say this at the beginning. I've gotten texts from friends. I've seen videos. Outside of losing a loved one, I can't possibly fathom watching everything that you have built and love and own. And I don't mean like material things like televisions, right? I mean, but like, I have family heirlooms, a family Bible. I've got military awards. I've got a Medal of Honor in my house from my great-grandfather. I mean, like, I couldn't imagine watching all that burn to the ground that quickly the way they have. And so my thoughts and prayers are out to everyone. I know that but I do think that it's fair to discuss the policies and the politics that have led to this. Because I think if this were the shoe was on the other foot, they'd be like, Donald Trump's to blame for all of this. The governors are Republicans. He's horrible. And Karen Bass, I was blown away, Larry, because I'm watching all these media shows, right? I flip around every day. It's an addiction. And they're all talking about this, and no one's willing to say, yes, Karen Bass cut the budget of the LA Fire Department by $17.5 million. Why is that so difficult?
I don't know. It's fundamental. You're so right. And somehow all of these news anchors couldn't find their way to Western North Carolina when the hurricane hit right before the election, because we know that was going to make the Biden-Harris response look bad. But boy, they all tripped over themselves to be seen in front of these burning buildings in California, yet they're missing the biggest story. And that is it. The biggest story is the failed policies of one-party rule in that state. It's tragic. I have friends who have lost their homes, who live in Southern California. Thankfully, my children and my ex-wife, they're safe. They live in a different part of the county. But this is god-awful, and it is absolutely directly related to the horrible policies. Karen Bass is Exhibit A. Not only the cutting of the LA Fire Department budget, but also, part of the money that would have gone to the fire department, they had to resend to the police department because they defunded the police to take a knee to the Black Lives Matters protesters several years ago. The entire place is a basket case. Gavin Newsom, because of his forestry policies and his water policies, has crippled the state. And it's not like this doesn't happen every several years, Sean. They could have fixed this problem, but they don't need to, because they don't answer to a political opponent and they don't answer to a media. And for some reason, all of the other members of the media and the anchors, they say, it would be inappropriate to politicize this right now. Well, that never stops them when there's a Republican in close proximity to a natural disaster. So the double standard is palpable, and it's disgusting.
Yeah,
go ahead, Jen. I was going to say,
Sean.
to me, it's the politics and the policies.
Yeah, and honestly though, why do we act surprised anymore? I hate to say that, and certainly first I will say our prayers are with those in Southern California. Your heart breaks watching that footage, hearing these stories come out. So many people impacted, from middle America to multimillionaire celebrities, and we're hearing all those stories come out. But again, you have to look back and say these people vote for these leaders, these elected officials, these Democrat officials. They keep voting for the same thing. They complain that things aren't the way they should be in California. They're not happy. The quality of life is not where it should be. But they keep voting for this. And they keep expecting that, if a mayor can't run a city in good times, well, how are they going to respond to a crisis? We saw this in places like New Orleans, obviously much different scenario, but a lot of criticism toward the mayor there for how things were conducted in New Year's Eve in terms of having barricades and so forth. You look at people like Lori Lightfoot in Chicago. You can name a lot of these blue city mayors that have not been able to lead in times of crisis, and people are then wondering why. And of course, we see the tragedy that results afterwards.
Grace, Sarah Foster is a Democrat. She's the daughter of David Foster, the very talented musical producer. She is an actress. She's a very successful podcaster. She tweeted this out. We pay the highest taxes in California. Our fire hydrants are empty. I mean, they're literally, the DEI water hire person is doing a press conference about why they can't get water. Our vegetation was overgrown, brush not cleared. Our reservoirs were emptied by our governor because tribal leaders wanted to save fish. Our fire department budget was cut by our mayor, but thank God drug addicts are getting their drug kits. Mayor of LA, that's Karen Bass, at Gavin Newsom, resign. Your far left policies have ruined our state and also our party. She's a Democrat, a very prominent Democrat with a big megaphone. She's one of the very few people that is willing to speak the truth right now, that these policies, not the politics, these policies, cutting the budget, lack of vegetation, allowing the growth and all this stuff. And like, as Larry pointed out, Grace, this isn't like some new thing. Wildfires are a big deal in California.
Yeah, I heard Rick Caruso, who ran against Karen Bass in 2022 to be mayor, and unfortunately he lost, and he had a lot of backing from those big celebrities that you mentioned. I don't know if that helps or hurts you at this point in politics, but something he said that really stood out to me. He said, what's predictable is preventable. And I thought that is such a great point. Like, if you know that you have the winds are going to be this high, we haven't cleared out the brush, we need water in the reservoirs, and you don't take the correct actions, and then instead, as the mayor, you decide, I'm going to go to the inauguration in Ghana, I'm not even going to be on the continent, it's a horrible look. And I think to try to redirect it to anyone else to blame. And I saw a little bit of that from Newsom, where he said, this is it's got to go to the local folks. They've got to let you know. No, the buck stops with you. You're the governor. And, we've all been so careful to say, listen, we don't want to make it political, but I do think there's a big difference. And I have seen a lot of Republicans being particularly sensitive to this, to say, these are Americans. These are the people in California deserve our prayers. They deserve our support. The firefighters, all the first responders are doing an amazing job. No one is cheering this on. No one is blaming those people who are watching their homes be destroyed. That's not how we are. I don't tend to think as a party. We don't look at this and say, see, this is what you get. But at the same time, to be able to say, these politicians, they can take blame for this. That's their job. Their job is not just, to cut ribbons and get awards. Their job is to be responsible when something goes wrong. And it's a very important distinction that I think Republicans make, to say, I'm praying for the people there. I feel terrible for them, but I want these officials to be held responsible.
I just like to say, as a former Californian, California is a weird state. And, the old joke about, Mussolini was a fascist, but he got the trains running on time. I think that there's a difference between Westerners and Easterners and how they view the role of government. In California, they very rarely vote for people based on whether they can competently run the government. I know that seems weird, but the fact that this is a government failure, I don't know if it's going to register on election day. They vote based on ideas, sadly. And this last mayoral election between Caruso and Bass was running on racial identity politics, Black Lives Matter, and the fact that she'd be the first Black woman mayor. And that trumped the problems with homelessness, the problems with inefficient government, and it trumped the fact that Caruso was running to refund the police. Ultimately, Bass refunded the police as well. Newsom is the same animal. It's okay that he's an incompetent governor and everything in the state is falling apart. But boy, oh boy, he made sure that women in that state can go ahead and kill their babies before they're born. In Californians, they trump that. That's more important. People ask me, when will Republicans be in charge of California again? And my only answer is when things get so damn bad that they're willing to vote for a Republican. That might be where we are right now.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we are.
It's scary to think, Larry, what kind of a tragedy is it going to be the next great earthquake for California? Obviously, they face a lot of potential natural disasters there. What is it going to take for people to actually wake up and say, we're going to vote for change? I mean, you look at how Ron DeSantis is handled. Obviously, they know Florida is going to be getting hurricanes. They have such a great plan in place. They can be hit twice in a matter of a couple of weeks and have things cleared out, ready to go. People know where they can go to get assistance, and there's so much great communication. And then you look at a state like California and you say, why does it have to be that way? It doesn't until people wake up.
The dark horse here could be Nicole Shanahan, the woman who was the running mate for RFK Jr. before he dropped out of the race. She's been kind of red-pilled, but she's still kind of a woman of the left, sensibility-wise. She's got funds, and she could very easily challenge here as a very independent-minded type Republican and make some noise in the state of California. Keep an eye on her.
I will say just one quick note that we should keep receipts on all of this. It's early on in this, incoming administration here, but we know who's going to be looking at the Oval Office when 2028 rolls around.
All right. I want to pick up on something Grace said real quick, because you can predict certain things. Unfortunately, when it comes to emergencies and accidents, many of us have a fire extinguisher or a first aid kit in our house because we want to prevent things. We unfortunately, God forbid, we ever have to deal with some kind of fire in our home or first aid issue, that we have a kit ready to go. In the same way that we prevent those kind of things from happening and we are taking steps to that, I would suggest to everyone to get a life vac in their house. I have one. It's here in my house to prevent a choking incident. God forbid it ever happened. It is being used by police and first responders, restaurants, cruise lines, because it can make anybody a hero in the face of a choking accident. God forbid one were to happen. It is so simple and easy to use. If you ever have to use it, they replace the mouthpiece for you. If your kids don't have one in a school, they'll send one free to your school. It is such an easy to use tool. There's no excuse to not have one in your house right now, because it's such a simple tool to prevent such a tragic thing from happening. Get your very own life vac by going to lifevac.net. It's life and then vac.net, lifevac.net. Do not wait another minute, because your life could very well depend on it. All right, guys, I want to switch gears. The president was up on Capitol Hill last night prior to the Carter funeral, and he met with GOP senators. As I joked at the outset, he's going to be meeting with everyone. And the big thing right now is one bill or two. The president's like, I don't really care, which frankly, I agree with him. Like, who cares about the process? I want to get things done. And here's what it's going to take. Larry, I just am fascinated by the dynamics of this, because it was funny. Axios put it out this morning. Never before has somebody come into office the way Trump has, with such utter and complete control of the movement, right? These senators, the House members, are like, whatever. And I'm so excited. Let's just face it. I'm jealous. I'm jealous that I was there in the first term. I'm honored. Like I've said, but man, did these guys have their act together. Stephen Miller's there last night, apparently reading out here one of the 100, orders that we have ready to go day one. They have their act together. I feel so excited about the first 100 days.
Yeah, I agree with you. And listen, there was, I'm sure, nothing compared to defeating Hillary Clinton that night in 2016. But boy, oh boy, there's something to be said about going through that first term, then, having 4 years to regroup, reassess, recognize the mistakes you made and different approaches, and then hit the ground running with an experienced team. I keep beating the same drum that the most critical person for all this stuff, for reconciliation, for fixing a lot of the things in the administrative state that Trump wants to do, is going to be Russ Vought, the director of OMB. He's one of the few people who's coming back with the same job he had in the first term, and he can hit the ground running. And then as we go with this reconciliation process, keep your eye on one of the big chairmen in the House who does not get the same level of recognition as your Jim Jordan or your James Comer gets, Jason Smith, chairman of Ways and Means. I think Trump refers to him as my tax guy. He's the guy who's going to be shepherding a lot of this reconciliation stuff through. A lot of people like Jason Smith. He's not a firebrand. He doesn't make enemies on the other side or in the Senate. He's going to be able to build a coalition around some of the fundamental things Trump wants and some of the things that he can do in the reconciliation process that might be off your radar, like this whole offshore drilling ban that Biden's trying to sneak through. Well, offshore drilling could be part of reconciliation. You can make a very, very real argument that that's part of a revenue issue for the federal government. So he can fix so much through reconciliation, and Jason Smith is going to be the critical player in the House.
Jed Pellegrino, the press conference, you covered Trump, and then you hosted a show covering a lot of what Trump did. Like, I felt like this press conference that he had the other day, it was so measured. The tone and tenor, the way he approached subjects, the breadth and depth at which he went through key subjects. Is there anything that in your mind stood out or that you said, I'm glad he addressed this, or I'm excited about this?
I would say, like you said, we're seeing a different Donald Trump than we saw, even a couple of years ago. And certainly from the last administration, I think we're going to see a lot more of him out there in front of the podium again, as he was in the last administration. And I think the American people need to see that. I wouldn't say nothing off the top of my mind that stood out particularly, but just the fact that here we have a president compared to the last one who was we always saw the back of his head as he turned and walked away, not taking any questions, particularly in times of crisis when we had a lot of questions that needed answering. We never heard from him. We could barely hear from his press secretary for the last year because she couldn't answer the questions herself. She had to bring in somebody else. So it's nice to be able to hear from a commander-in-chief directly speaking to the American people, taking questions from anybody in the press, which we haven't seen for a long time. So I'm looking forward to that transparency that we haven't seen for the last 4 years.
Yeah, Sean, I know they'd never admitted publicly, but how happy is the White House press corps right now? How happy are the reporters who have covered the White House? Oh,
you know what, Larry? I literally was on the phone with a White House reporter yesterday, and he was trying to do this BS story about, do you think that the press has something to worry about? And I said, cool, pump your brakes. Just pump your brakes. I go, let's just be honest with you. I want to just stop and give you some perspective. He's like, okay, but don't you? I said, whoa, hold on. Corinne Jean-Pierre pulled 400 hard passes of reporters. You said nothing. President Biden rarely, as Jen sees, you see the back of his head, not the front of it, because he doesn't do interviews. He hasn't sat down for a final exit interview on camera. He doesn't hold press conferences. Corinne Jean-Pierre is historically incompetent. They don't give you answers to anything. And you guys want to talk about what Trump's done. What has Trump done exactly? And I want to get Grace's take on this because I said, well, just to be clear, in the last 30 days, President Trump has held 2 stem-widener press conferences where he's called from everyone. He started his last one with David Sanger of the New York Times, right? He has been extremely inclusive, accessible. He tweets out or truths out every thought he has. If you're a reporter, this is what you dream of, and you want to talk to me about your friggin' nightmares, grow up. And Grace, I got to be honest with you. I was like, this is like, give some perspective to what's going on because you got treated like crap. Now, the only thing is, I get it. If you're a lazy, reporter and you don't want to do any work, maybe you will miss the fact that you could go into work at 11, leave at 2 under Biden, and you may actually have to wake up at a normal hour and stay up late under Trump.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. And it reminds me of one of my favorite exchanges Trump ever had with the press. I mean, there were so many great ones during his first term, but there was one, and I think he was at Mar-a-Lago. There was a lot of gold around him, so he could have been really at any of his properties. But he was going back and forth, and a reporter from the New York Times asked him a question. And he said, where are you from? And the guy said, I'm from the New York Times. And he said, oh, the failing New York Times. Go ahead. What's your question? And the guy said, we're actually doing pretty well. And Trump looked right at him, just like that, and goes, say thank you, Mr. Trump. And that's the only thing that I'm worried about, is that maybe people will start reading and getting subscriptions. This whole idea that they're scared is absolute BS. And I just want to say one other thing, because you guys know if I can bring up Tom Brady, if I can bring him into the mix, I'm going to. But I saw this Instagram video the other day where all great ideas come from. And it was Tom Brady, and he was talking about how his losses really informed his life more than his successes. And it sounds corny, and we've all heard that before. Like, you learn a lot when you fail.
Yeah.
But in the case of Trump, and we're talking about that first term, the 4-year break, now the second term, I think it's really true, because I think there were a lot of mistakes, and I don't say that to be like a Monday morning sports analogy. I'm saying that because when you look at the way they're coming in, and Jen alluded to this too, like gangbusters, they have their ducks in a row. They know what they're doing. They know who to be aware of. There's a blessing in being screwed over because it opens your eyes. I think the first time around, Trump really did think, I won, and now I'm going to get a fair shake like everybody else who's ever won. And now he's going in saying, don't worry about a fair shake. I have everything ready to go, and you guys aren't going to stop me. And that difference is why, like Larry just said, I'm so excited for this first 100 days because the possibilities are endless because he's going in eyes wide open.
Jen Pellegrino, can I riff off this for a second? Because I said you've been at two different networks.
Right.
So what Grace Curley was saying, right? Think about this. In 2016, the ratings for CNN and MSNBC go through the roof when Trump gets elected. They're the resistance. Subscriptions go up at the Washington Post and the New York Times, right? But contrast that to this time. The Washington Post this week announced they're cutting staff 4% across the board. CNN's ratings are in the toilet. MSNBC's ratings are in the toilet. They're getting spun off to be like a carnival show. And I wonder just from your perspective, as somebody who's been in the media, the first time 8 years ago, they all went up. Everybody tuned in to MSNBC and CNN. And now they're like abandoning them. Why?
Yeah, I think people learned a lot about President Trump in this last year. I think obviously there was so much dismissal of him going into the 2016 election. They were all shocked. Those montages of election night never get old from the CNN and MSNBCs of the world. But then obviously their people wanted to tune in and hear them rant and rave against what President Trump was doing at the time. And obviously they spent the last year, the media, Biden's weaponized government going after President Trump, the former president at the time. And they spent all that time going after him. And I think the American people were watching this very closely. They saw how he moved through every challenge that came his way. We saw how Butler, Pennsylvania, the attempted assassination, really, I think, changed him as a person. And we saw a different man in the debates. We saw a different man in terms of how he handled himself. And I think that really resonated with the American people. And I think when they saw how the networks covered up for the Biden administration in so many ways, how they pushed Kamala Harris out in the front, making her seem like the front runner when she never was. I think they got tired of that. They said, you know what, you've been lying to us all this time. A lot of us on the right knew that, but I think it took a lot of their viewers to realize that they weren't being truthful. And we saw that again with Mika and Joe going to bend the knee at Mar-a-Lago and how their ratings tanked in the aftermath of that.
Yeah. Jen's 100. If I could just amplify, the American people don't like being lied to by their media sources. And the two big lies, the first big lie was the cover up of Joe Biden's health. I think it's going to take a long time for the media to recover from the obvious fact that we all saw what was going on and they continued to pretend that it was. In fact, they did worse. If you were a right of center political commentator and you said there's something wrong with Biden, you were called a liar. You were called a cheap faker by these media outlets. I don't think the American people will ever forgive that, number one. And number two, these same people like Joe and Mika and George Stephanopoulos and Jake Tapper, the people whose numbers are going down, they told all their viewers that if Trump wins, it's the end of the country. It's the end of democracy. It's the end of the Constitution. And now Barack Obama is joking around with him after the election. And Mika and Joe go down and visit. I mean, they're liars. That's the point. And Sean, you know as well as I do, the engagement on what we're doing with talk radio in Washington, D.C., and with our direct to streaming outlets and platforms that we have, people are sampling us. They want to see our perspective on the news. Our numbers are growing. They still have an appetite for Trump content. They're just done with the lies they've been told.
Yes. Hey, Larry, you better thank Sean for that. He filled in for you. So
I had one thing into this whole conversation because Larry just hit on something that I've been thinking of during this conversation. And we've been talking about how Jen mentioned, Trump seems a little bit more calmed down. He's very mellow at the mic. He seems very comfortable in his own skin. And I think if you really have to drill down on what that is, obviously time and, lessons and all that. But another big factor is social media. Like the difference between 2016, 2020, and now is that it's almost like, when you don't like someone or you think someone's annoying and no one else agrees with you. And then all of a sudden one day someone comes over to you and goes, you're right. That person is kind of a pain in the ass. And you feel so vindicated and you're like, yeah. This person gets it now. I'm not crazy. I think Trump feels like he can go out there and say something, and he goes, you know what? I know all you losers are going to spin it, but I've got my guys now who are going to tell the people what's really going on. They're going to do their own autopsies after the fact. They're going to fact check for me. I have someone in my corner, and it takes a little bit of pressure off, where it's like, it's not 10-on-1 anymore. He has X, he has Elon Musk, he has these heavy hitters who have his back, and that's a good feeling. And you can kind of go into things not being so defensive, which I don't blame him for being like that for so long, but it must feel very validating.
Yeah.
And Grace, to your point, so many people, again, as we've seen, are tuning out of the legacy media. We're seeing salaries cut. We're seeing big name anchors that have worked at these networks for years departing because they're not getting their needs met financially. And so now people are turning to the digital space. Our landscape is changing, to your point. Obviously, Sean and others in this space are doing really well because of that, because they're hearing the truth. People are so fed up with being lied to. They want to go to these places like the Sean Spicer show where they can hear that unfiltered truth that you're not getting anywhere else these days.
Yeah. And Grace is so right about having a team now and support. I remember in the first year of the Trump presidency, Trump was out there fighting these fights and calling these people names and attacking. And I remember saying, Bill Clinton was able to distance himself from all of this and be like everybody's friend and the good old boy and always be smiling on TV, because he had James Carville and Paul Begala out there throwing these daggers and just like screaming at all of Clinton's critics and opponents. Like, where is Donald Trump's Paul Begala? Where is Donald Trump's James Carville? And now he's got him. And I think that he's comfortable. He knows that he doesn't have to fight every fight. He doesn't have to tweet every tweet. He can sit back and he's got people doing it on his behalf. And that's very good for him, I think.
Yeah, I want to get to winners and losers, but I will just cap this off by saying I think you guys, excellent points on this. I think the one other thing that's happened, at least for me as somebody who's been in and out of like dealing with the media for 30 years, Trump showed us how to win. Like for so long, it was, God, I don't know that I want to take on MSNBC. I don't want to take on the Washington Post. And Trump went, I'm going to come at you head on and I will crush you like a bug. And you saw people like George Stephanopoulos and ABC News fold like a cheap suit because they knew he was right. And Trump has given us the ability to say, why do we need them? We can fight, we can win. And that's what ties it all together. We have other outlets, we have fighters. But anyway, all right, I want to get to winners and losers because it's Thursday. Jen Pellegrino, who do you think's had a really good week and who do you think's had a bad week?
Well, obviously, really bad week for Kamala Harris. Obviously, the nation is in mourning right now, but her party is in mourning. She's in mourning, given the fact that she had to certify her own election loss to Donald Trump. And again, if you watch those clips, you look at her expression, you look at Speaker Johnson. Obviously, it speaks volumes to where the country is right now, and her realizing that all that was built up for her was all a lie all that time.
Who had a good week, do you think?
I think Mike Johnson, the speaker, had a good week. Obviously, he retained power. We're in a great place. We're going to get this country up and running in just a matter of days here with President Trump back in the Oval Office. So he had a great week, and ultimately the country is a result of that because we're going to do great things in these weeks to come. Larry
O'Connor, good and bad.
Trying to make my winners and losers very DC inside baseball for you, Sean, because I know that's your wheelhouse.
That's
so
my wheelhouse.
The loser is Chuck Schumer because of the way the Laken-Riley bill passed in the House.
I was going to make that my winner, Larry. I got to redo a winner. That was going to be my winner.
John Fetterman going on Brett Baer on Fox News saying, I can't believe we can't get 7 senators over this. This was Chuck Schumer's first chance.
By the way, we're at 9 now. We're at 9.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, But I was going to say that was my winner of the week. So, okay, that's.
I like to look at it from Chuck Schumer's perspective.
I get it. That's very swampy of you. Who's your winner?
The winner of the week, again, kind of inside baseball, but every single one of Trump's cabinet nominees, because of the news cycle this week, partly because of the snow in D.C., but then the fires in California, there was so much for the media to focus on that they didn't focus on Pete Hegseth and RFK Jr.
Oh, good stuff.
This is another week where they could work behind the scenes, shake hands, have meetings with senators without being in the spotlight, and that's going to help the confirmation
process. I love
process.
that. The nominees.
Every single one of them is closer to confirmation now than
100%. I don't think a single one loses. Grace Curley, who do you have on your list this week?
Okay, so I'm going to say the loser is Karen Bass. Never a good idea to be in Donna when your city is burning. And the interview, or, the ambush that she had when she landed at LAX from that reporter,
Yeah.
David Blevins from Sky News. I mean, 10 questions and just complete silence.
Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today?
Back up, boss. Appreciate it.
Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today?
She looked like she was trying to will the door open with her mind. It was absolutely pathetic. I don't think she can come back from it. I think it's like a career-defining moment, that 2-minute video. And my winner is the great people of Canada. I mean, congrats. Trudeau is out of there. You didn't even need an op-ed from George Clooney or from whoever the Canadian George Clooney, Ryan Reynolds would be. He did it all on his own, and that's great news for them.
It's funny. I was thinking about maybe Trudeau's my loser, but you just flipped it on its head. All right, so I have my winner is going to be Facebook users. Mark Zuckerberg bent a knee, and I don't believe him. I think his crypto bro video is ridiculous, but I will just say, hey, if that's what it takes to promote free speech more, good for it. The losers are everyone who's living under Obamacare. Just to give you a sense, the average family health insurance premium in 2000 was $6,000. In 2012, it was $16,000. And in 2024 is $26,000. That's a 342% increase since 1999.
Wow.
So for all those people who thought Obamacare was good. Anyway, I always love this part because there's so many different perspectives on who had a good and bad week that and you guys never disappoint. That's awesome. Thank you all for tuning in. We got a great show tomorrow. As I mentioned, Matt Laszlo is going to be here to break down everything that we need to know about UFOs and drones, and in a way that no one else is going to discuss with you. Trust me when I tell you this. It is going to be a fascinating conversation because he's holding politicians accountable for our national security. This isn't just about drones and UAPs and UFOs. It's about our national security and what you need to know and whether we're really under threat. So make sure that you hit the notification button and tune in. And remember, my free column every Tuesday and Friday comes out, SeanSpicer.com. A lot of great information on the Trump-Vance transition, as well as balls, parades, inauguration. I can't get you tickets. I can't get you jobs, but I can tell you who can. Larry O'Connor probably can. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.